Diabetes is not for dummies. You know those old books that you used to be able to order? Cooking for Dummies, Soccer for Dummies, Learning Life Lessons for Dummies. Well, diabetes unfortunately cannot be condensed into a one-size-fits-all approach, but what we can do is simplify the entirety of diabetes and make it feel like a little bit less of a burden on you and a bit more like you got an assistant kind of doing some of the things for you, right? So today we're talking about that. Going to help you figure out how to get diabetes a bit more streamlined so it does feel less hectic, less chaotic, as we know diabetes is all encompassing. So without any further ado, we're going to get into our theme song, and then I got a story for you.
I've spent the last 10 years pushing the limits while identifying trends and patterns in my type 1 diabetes management. Follow along as I learn, apply, and share the fitness, nutrition, and lifestyle strategies that I've learned from diabetes experts around the world. The real question is, how can we live fearlessly with diabetes while maintaining stable blood sugars? This podcast is here to give you the answer. My name is Matt Vandervecht, head coach and co-founder of FTF Warrior, and welcome to Part of My Pancreas.
All right, so I lied. I got two stories for you. First one, though, is a bit comical. So recently I was on a coaching call with some of my high-level type 1 diabetes coaching clients. And if you don't know, I run a coaching program. We teach people our 80-20 blood sugar formula. It's how we stabilize and predict blood sugars. It's how I get all those stable lines on my graph. I put them right there just for fun so you can see the stability. But it didn't always used to be that way. I did not understand how to do diabetes this perfectly, or to be completely honest, it's not perfect, by the way. There are still rough days. But I didn't know what I was doing at all for years in the beginning, right? It took me a while to get things figured out. Now, that being said, my clients come to me to learn about stabilizing blood sugars, what goes up, what goes down, why are my blood sugars going crazy, and how do I make them not go crazy, right? How do I get my life back, eat the foods that I love, do the things that I want to do, go for that run, travel the world, whatever it may be, lose the weight. These are things that my clients come to me for. And we talk about the science behind blood sugars, understanding them on a deeper level, because if you can understand why blood sugars go up and down, you're able to do the right things, essentially, to stabilize them and take those proactive actions, right? So during one of these conversations, I was walking through the specifics of blood sugars. I was kind of geeking out on them, and going through the science behind what's going on and how we can redirect the blood sugars, keep them in range more often for this client. And during the specific coaching call, this client's husband was in the background, and he was just kind of passively listening on. And he said something off screen I didn't quite catch, and she started busting up laughing. And I was like, "What did I miss?" And she said, "My husband, who is also a surgeon, had said, 'Holy cow! It's like you have to be a genius to get this diabetes thing figured out. That is not for a stupid person.'" Just very blunt, and I couldn't help but laugh too. But then it kind of struck me after, of course, the entire group was just kind of giggling at that, right? Like, diabetes is not for stupid people. It's like, well, actually, you're right. You kind of think about it for a second and you're like, holy cow. The things that we do on a daily basis, we do calculations every time we eat food, right? There's a lot that goes into this thing. Diabetes is not for dummies. And so that's where today's episode title came through. But it really did get me thinking, like, wow, there's a lot of things that we maybe overlook or we're just used to. And as a result, we don't give ourselves credit for all the effort that goes into this. And my clients know more than anybody else, our programs are intense. I'll be straight up with you. I am with all of them. It takes work to get this diabetes thing figured out. If you want smooth, stable blood sugars through all the activities, sports, meals, overnights, you have to put the work in up front. And this is one of the few diseases, maybe even the only one, where upon diagnosis, it's not just, hey, here's some pills, and you'll be fine. It's here's some insulin, try not to kill yourself, because there's a lot of things that make blood sugars go up and down, and doctors don't even know about most of them. It's absolute chaos from day one, right? So first of all, I just want to say I'm proud of you for being here, trying to learn more about your diabetes, being the type of person that is proactive and actually trying to better yourself so that it's not just you surviving with diabetes, but also attempting to thrive with your diabetes. I'm proud of you. Congrats on being an awesome person. True warrior. Now, that being said, I promised you two stories today. So second story is a bit more lesson driven. And recently within FTF Warrior, which is the company that I run, along with some others, amazing team members that I have, we've been hiring recently, doing weeks and weeks and weeks of interviews and just really trying to nail down the right type of person that we want to join our mission, and really to be the right culture fit, the one that has the right skills to help us build out these new resources for you, and really just have a lot of fun along the way, right? So in this process, recently I actually just got off an amazing interview with an individual who's going to be joining us, and she's got some really, really fun ideas. And during that conversation, we're talking about how she uses assistants, not like, how do I put this? Like a virtual assistant, right? Because we're all in the digital age. And so with this whole virtual assistant, she also has an executive assistant who, sits in with meetings and takes notes for her. And she's very high up the corporate ladder, has a big history working for big companies. And through that process, her assistant was taking notes while we were talking. I was like, wow, that's really cool. Having somebody do a lot of the work for you. And she was like, oh, my assistants are it's like some of the highest trained people ever. It's a mutual respect thing. Like, we're friends. They just serve at the highest level. They're so incredible. And it really does boil down to me just telling them what I need done, and they just get it done. It's like magic because they're so good at what they do, which allows her to then step into a higher level of thinking, of taking action, and do more of the high level boss type stuff, right? And it got me thinking along that process too. Like, when you're able to have a lot of the mundane stuff taken care of, you're able to step into, well, what's the big picture, right? How do I get the most out of today and attack these different tasks? And with diabetes, it can feel kind of similar, but oftentimes we do get stuck doing the mundane tasks, right? It's oftentimes that we're stuck counting our carbs, trying to figure out our insulin to carb ratio, trying to stuff our face because we're low, because we have a bunch of insulin on board, and then you go high, and it just feels like this repetitive task every single day of doing the basics with diabetes. You don't get time to step into that higher role of like, okay, now that blood sugars are cooperating, how do I predict where my blood sugars are going to go? Well, now that I know what to expect from my blood sugars, how do I start doing new fun things? How do I pick up a new hobby, go out for dessert? How do I go travel the world and figure out how time zones impact blood sugars? We don't get to do that oftentimes because diabetes keeps us in that lower level of operation. And what was interesting too is during this conversation, this assistant that she had was just taking notes, getting things done, and setting things up live on the call. And ultimately, she decided she was going to set me up with one of her assistants to help me get some of my tasks done. So that was part of bringing her onto the team, is that we would kind of be able to access her team of virtual assistants, and that would be able to help me step into a higher role where I can create more materials, create more videos, upgrade and update our programs, and do all this fun stuff to help you out even more with your diabetes. And in that process, it was just amazing to hear about all these great things that they were going to take off of my plate. Because at the moment, I still do a lot of the stuff within FTF Warrior. Heck, I'm still editing these videos, and that's something I might not be doing in the near future. And that's going to give me more time back so that I can step into that higher role, and who knows, maybe create new variations of existing methods for controlling blood sugars. Maybe we can start looking into partnerships with bigger companies and start bringing you new resources, right? Who knows what that holds? But as we're talking, she had me list out all of these day-to-day tasks that I'm currently doing. And each one of them, she's like, yeah, you shouldn't be doing that still. No, you're way too busy to be doing that. We're going to have someone take over that for you. And it's just down the list of like everything that I'm doing. She's like, no, why are you still doing these things? This isn't going to help you help more people, which is your goal, right? It's to help more type 1 diabetics. I'm like, yes, exactly. And so she's like, okay, we need to take all these things off of your plate so you can go help more people. It's like, awesome. That sounds magical. When do we start? And she's like, oh, she's going to start right away. But you do have to get her up to speed. You have to start getting her access to the softwares and to, different accounts, and make sure that she has what she needs to create the SOPs, standard operating procedures, to create the resources, the replies, the video editing, like you have to set her up and train her so that she knows how to do these things. And I was like, oh, so it's not like just some magic button that I push and then everything's getting taken care of for me. I have to actually train her and onboard her and get her access to all these things. So there is work up front, right? And this brings me back to what I said earlier. Within diabetes, there are so many things that we do day to day, bogging us down, and it just feels like we can't get away from it sometimes, right? And oftentimes, if blood sugars are wacky, it feels like we can't win. So on a day-to-day basis, it just feels like we're losing and we can't figure it out, and we're supposed to be doing better, and our doctors are telling us that, we're non-compliant or whatever it is that you've heard. And it becomes this really depressing way of living life, because if you're not winning, you're not making progress, it impacts your happiness, it impacts your drive, and it drives us into a level of complacency that we get blamed for. Have you ever felt that before? Where it feels like, why should I even try? I can't figure this thing out. I've been trying for years or for however long I've had this disease, and there's just no answers, right? And so as we're looking at this whole hiring situation that we've got within the company, I'm starting to think about diabetes as like, holy cow, that used to be me. I used to be the person in diabetes world that would do all the mundane tasks, all the to-do lists, and try to accomplish everything, and it just wouldn't allow me to step into a place where I could enjoy life, right? I'm always so worried about the lows or the highs or my A1C or my time in range that I would forget to enjoy the day itself, right? Being present with family, saying yes to going out to eat, joining a new sports team because I didn't know if I was going to be able to keep my blood sugar stable enough or if I was going to be a liability for the other team members. Does this sound familiar? So as I'm starting to look at this new way of thinking, new way of approaching business within FTF Warrior, I can see that within diabetes, there's this interesting correlation, right? Where in the business, I got to stop doing the day-to-day low-level stuff where it's just me inputting numbers into a spreadsheet, right? Or taking notes on other things. I need to let somebody else do that. Have an assistant in place so that I can step into the higher role of making more videos, helping more people with diabetes, establishing partnerships with larger corporations to bring you more resources, more help in the end. And with diabetes, if you're doing the mundane tasks, if you can't get blood sugars to stabilize, you need some form of assistance, with your blood sugars, some guidance to step into the higher level. So if you can get blood sugars cruising, right, to stabilize your blood sugars, it allows you to lift your head above water, take a breath, not feel like you're drowning, right? So if there was a way to have an assistant come in, do all the work for you, figure out your blood sugars, obviously we would all take that, right? Hands down, somebody to do my blood sugar dirty work for me? Yes, please. Well, here's the thing. There are a few different options that are similar to that, but unfortunately they're being treated like no work up front and all of the assistance to take care of the tasks, right? We've got these new algorithms within smart insulin pens, within insulin pumps, right? We've got a variety of different insulin pumps, and most of them have these algorithms that have this predictive technology, but they're being marketed in a way that sounds like there's no work up front. Kind of sounds like you bring an assistant in and just say, thank you, you take care of that. I'm not going to train you. This is just supposed to be a magic transition to a better life, right? Unfortunately, that's not how these algorithms work, right? It's not a hands-off thing where you can just forget about your diabetes. First of all, most of these algorithms do require that they are set up properly, right? So especially with some of the newer ones, if they're not set up in the settings properly, it's going to be a terrible assistant, right? So if you have your bolus, your basal, your correction factor, if those aren't set properly, it's like having an assistant that doesn't speak the same language as you. Good luck communicating, let alone getting the help that you need, right? Now, with any of the algorithms, you have to understand how they're operating. You have to establish that communication because there's still human input, right? The insulin pumps aren't going to know if you spontaneously eat an entire sandwich and don't dose for it. It's not going to go smoothly, right? So you do have to still understand your diabetes. You have to put the work in to get things stabilized before you can start using the assistant. But with these new algorithms, we talk about Tandem's Control IQ. We have the new Omnipod 5. We have Medtronic's new varieties along with the smart insulin pen called InPen. All these different things, if you know how the basics of your blood sugars work and you can get things set up and running smoothly without your input, like kind of like training the assistant that I'm going to be doing, right? Then you can step back and start getting into that higher level where you can enjoy life. You can actually kind of look around and be like, wow, look at all the freedom I have now that my blood sugars are more controlled. Right. And what I've noticed over the years is that when I look back 5, 8, 10 years ago, when my blood sugars were crazy, my quality of life suffered. It was not fun. I could have moments of fun, but then I would be interrupted by a high blood sugar, nauseous feeling, or a low blood sugar crashing. I had to stop everything, grab a juice box. Now that my blood sugars are more well controlled, now that I use what we call it, what I teach is the 80-20 blood sugar formula to keep everything running smoothly, my quality of life has skyrocketed. Right? I'm allowed to now take a breather from my diabetes because I know it's going to keep running stable. I can look around and go, what do I want to do today? I feel like going for a hike in the middle of the mountains, right? And I'm not worried about it. That's a huge, huge win for me. I used to be a little bit of a nervous wreck thinking about going out into the wilderness without cell reception and hoping I didn't go low and die out there, right? So what I want you to take away from this episode is that as I'm looking at hiring and I have a virtual assistant coming in to help me with these things, to start taking some of the work off of my plate so that I can then step into a higher role of helping more people. With diabetes, there's these day-to-day things that if you would take the initial work to get them set up in place, right? Whether it's your smart pump settings, your smart pen settings, getting things rolling smoothly there. Maybe it's you finally establishing your basal, your insulin to carb ratio, your correction factor, or studying just a little bit about your diabetes to learn about the timing of insulin, your pre-bolus, all these different pieces. If you were to put a little bit of effort up front into those things, how much smoother would things be in the end when you're able to start living your life, living your best life on your terms? So to get that in place, like I said, you do have to put the work in up front. You do have to actually start taking responsibility for your diabetes. You cannot outsource this outright. You have to do the training initially. You have to go through it yourself to set that thing up for success, whether it is your pump, your shots, or yourself, right? Now with diabetes, because we can't outsource everything, you got to bring somebody in or start following somebody else and follow their advice, right? This could be a doctor. This could be really any medical team member, diabetes educator, a nurse, if they know what they're talking about. This could be a coach. This could be a nutritionist. This could be your trainer. Granted, they have to know how type 1 works, right? Because we're a little bit different than the non-diabetic population. But take that step today. Look around at what you want your life to look like. If you do want to get into a place where you're thriving with diabetes, you're going to have to take care of the groundwork first, right? Put that work in initially, like my clients do, to then reap the rewards later on, where you can keep blood sugar stable through meals, through activities, overnight. I can't tell you how much amazing sleep I've been able to get. Sleep is so underrated. It's amazing what happens when you get a restful night and you're not woken up by blood sugars like I used to be. So if that's worth it to you, it's time to start putting in some effort, right? Get the foundation set so that you can step into the better version of yourself where you get to enjoy more of life, the flavors, the fun, the family, right? So look around. Just take inventory of what's going on, where are the problem areas with your blood sugar. You start looking around. Do I go high? Do I go low? Where are my uncertainties? Where do my frustrations lie? Where am I holding back? Where am I restricting myself from living my best life? Oftentimes that's food or activity for a lot of people that I talk to. And just really be honest with yourself about where you're at. And if you don't have a guide yet, you don't have an assistant yet, we are updating and upgrading our programs. There's a lot of new things going on. This is why we're hiring a lot of new team members, because we're building things out to be even better than they've ever been before. And if that's something you are looking for assistance on, to have somebody come in and give you assistance with this process, I have a training I want you to go check out. There's some new stuff we've got going on in there as well. But you head over to diabetesinaction.com. All right, that's going to go over the introduction to the 80-20 blood sugar formula, which is how I keep my blood sugar super stable, right? And this is actually the the report I always forget, but I remember today, finally. The report for my last week, my time in range, 96%. Week before that was 95. Week before that was 95. Week before that, I think, was like 94. So every single week we're in the 90s. That is 100% credited to the 80-20 blood sugar formula. So I want you to go check that out, take some notes. If this is something that you do want guidance with, there's an opportunity at the end of that video to check it out, fill out a form, and see if we can help. I want to make sure that we are a good fit, and if we're not, I'll find something else, either a resource that we have or a different organization that can help out. No matter what, people leave that call with absolute certainty and clarity on what their next steps are. So go to diabetesinaction.com, figure out how you can start laying the foundations so that you do have space to have an assistant come in, right? Help you out with the day-to-day with diabetes so you can start living your best life. That's what I want for you. All right. So diabetesinaction.com. Go check it out. It's free. Go watch the training. And then if you would like assistance, we can always talk about that as well. All right. Hope this one was helpful for you. I cannot wait for our clients to start experiencing this new built out version of what we got with all the new team members coming in. It's thrilling. We even have some graduates of our program that are really working with us as well. And I cannot wait for this whole new chapter of helping the world of type 1 diabetes to thrive. So head over there, diabetesinaction.com. I'll see you guys in the next episode. And as always, keep up the fight.